fishing news is sponsored by these fine partners.
Now here's a video I could watch all day long, sent to me this week by William DiLorenzo. A large amount of bait out back behind Margate, a few small bluefish in the mix as well, he said. But this is what happens this time of year as the young of the year, those little peanut bunker and the finger mullet, start to push their way out of the back bays and estuaries towards their coastal migrations. It's one of the reasons why I personally keep harping on the need for some northwest winds to blow off the warmer surface temperatures, bring up some of that cooler, fresher upwelling. I don't say fresh, you know what I'm talking about, the cooler, cleaner water from up underneath, and then perhaps push some of that bait out along the beach into the waiting mouths of those fish we desire most. Jim Hutchinson, New Jersey, Delaware Bay edition of the Fisherman magazine, here at the Real Seat in Brielle as we do this week's video forecast. It sure seems to be a lot of bait in the back, and all indications are things could get interesting. I was just talking to Eric Bunz at the Real Seat before. We were talking about this weekend ahead, and he kind of thought the same way. With some of that northwest wind, after we've had that east for about a week and all that chop, that things could get really interesting this weekend. Now, we're still getting some good reports on mostly school-sized stripers, though some 28 in the mix as well, in the back bays, especially the sod banks down in South Jersey, but in these local rivers as well. And I really do believe we're just about ready to get things started with this bait migration. Although granted, I think our mullet run for the most part is all but over at this point. But in terms of those northwesterlies, I mentioned my plans last week to start the morning off Friday in the Ocean County surf because of northwest winds. It was going to calm water. This is the scene that greeted me as the sun crept up over the horizon. A lot of adult bunker all over the place, pinned in tight, but there wasn't much underneath them except for some cocktail blues. And again, one of the things personally that I like about those offshore breezes is that the way bunker tend to nose up underneath the wind. So if you have a westerly, those bunker are going to get in tight, closer into the beach, and closer to where we hope a blitz would occur. Now, in that sense, except for a day of steady southerlies in our inshore coastal forecast coming up for this weekend ahead, it sure seems to be a decent mix of northwest winds and some north winds that really should get those striped bass on the move and perhaps get a few of those albies in the mix, especially in tighter along the beach. I actually got a cool message last week from Peter Gann, who is trying for some sea bass on his kayak, sea bass and blackfish, but he ended up catching 40 weakfish, a few blues, and a couple of false albacore on the troll. And he thanked the Fisherman magazine and Hookhouse Bait and Tackle and Joe Baggs for the tackle and tips to get him into the action. Of course, in terms of those albies in the wash, they're in, they're out, they're back and forth. It's one of those chases, and predominantly along the beachfronts in central and North Jersey. But as you get farther into the southern part of the state, if you're not chasing them around on your center console, your skiff, your best chances, of course, are getting out on those jetty and groin tips wherever possible. I did get a tip on albies at the Pocket at Island Beach State Park last week that I really couldn't share, and sadly I couldn't take advantage of it either. But Sal Timpani did. He said, quote, "Resin jigs were the ticket, as always." So keep that in mind as you're gearing up for this transitional time in the surf. While we wait for the big stripers to arrive, a lot of times it's going to be some of those other creatures in the mix, right? The false albacore, maybe a bonita or Spanish mackerel, and of course some of those schoolie fish as well. So you're thinking small plastics, you're thinking the resin jigs, the tins, and your favorite topwater and hard plastic swimmers as well. Just lined up here along the Gibbs section, and some super strikes as well. And I love those super strike little neck poppers, because when the fish are in tight and pouring on some of the bait up top, trust me, you want to have a little neck popper in there as well. And oh yeah, that bait in the wash. Don't be surprised to find an out-of-season fluke in the suds as well from time to time, especially because of all the bait. And that's what 9-year-old Eric Coulis learned over the weekend while fishing with Carl and the crew from the American Angler team. Now, of course, if you're still looking for summer flounder, you can still go down to Delaware. Their season is continually open all the time. There are a few fish still being caught, some in the surf, some inside Indian River Inlet, and of course at some of that structure, those reef sites offshore there in Delaware. As I mentioned before, think about that bait, how it's stacked up in the back, and don't overlook some of your casting possibilities in the back. Maybe some of the canals and lagoons from the bulkheads and piers. Even, as I said, the canals. I heard from fish hawk Val Seafelt with one of a double-digit catch. Stripers in the Forked River. They were throwing wonder-bred fishaholic finback shads. Dusk, dawn, if you can find some place at night, maybe a Rapala X-Rap, the Kettle Creeks, but again, some of those plastic shads will get the job done. I did also get a YouTube message from Michael Betts last week who said he's not having any luck lately, rig or bait. Nothing around his local waters, which are near the East Point Lighthouse near the Morris River. Well, Michael, the best I can offer you is stick and move. Wait it out or stick and move. The last I had heard from surfcaster Jose Lopez, he was plugging off of Belmar last week. This week, weather turned a little bit sour, so he decided to hit a secret tributary off the Delaware. He was fishing a saucy swimmer on a half-ounce jig head to find a few schoolies. So those fish are in the back in some of those estuaries. I wouldn't be surprised if at the mouth of the Morris River, you just got to put in your time, be at the right place at the right time. But again, it's all about the bait. Maybe you can be sticking with a chunk or a bloodworm, but I just think that those smaller jig heads with swim shads are the ticket at this point. The big news since last we spoke, of course, is black sea bass, the opening here in New Jersey last Friday. Folks have been gearing up at shops like the Real Seat and other coastal outfitters. In fact, if you want to come down here and get the latest on jigs, that's certainly the way to go to really up your score with some of those bigger fish, doing the slow pitch jigs, the vertical jigs, but stop in here. Weather has kept a lot of boats inshore, in port for the most part over the weekend because of that nasty weather, but things are shaping up to get back out there again and return to the biscuit grounds. Keisha Higgs from Bud Lake was aboard the Mijo on a Ramsey Outdoors annual black sea bass charter this week. And if you could see that rig back there that's behind Keisha, there's a lot going on there. You can see the teasers, a little bit of clam, some have a clam and gulp, and then at the bottom you have that bucktail. So if you're heading out on those head boats this week, make sure you bring a little extra spice. Most of them are going to supply you with the clams, but bring along some gulp, some of those swimming mullet. And also, be sure to pack along some fish bites to kind of spice up your offering. And again, those bucktails, those sprode bucktails will work as well. Wherever you are along the Jersey coast, though, where sea bass has reopened since last Friday, Monmouth, Ocean, Atlantic, or Cape May County, they are at this point closer inshore to where they're going to be later on in the season. So this is your best opportunity to get into some inshore sea bass before the fishing starts to take you farther east come November into December. Pete Adams, for example, got out Friday before the weather turned. He had a good day at the Ocean City Reef, topped off with this nice sea bass. He said conditions were perfect. The crowd was tight on the structure. They caught just shy of a limit with nonstop catch and release action as well on some of those undersized black sea bass. He did tell me, Pete said on the way back in, he said he saw more bunker in the water than he has ever seen before. We will get into a little black and blue action in just a moment, but first let's do a check-in from the Poconos with my friend George, the Pocono Outdoors Guy.
Well, hey, Jim, things are still looking good here in the Poconos. You know, the season's kicking in the fall run. Lots of great fish being caught. A couple of things that are standing out right now. A couple guys are getting really into the brown trout. Great time of year for that, both the natives and the stock trout. You're going to see them kind of all over. Justin Lerner hitting them over in New Jersey, getting into some real beautiful trophy browns on his techniques there. And also over here in Pennsylvania, of course, our own trout guru, Eric Goodstall, getting into those browns on a fly. So lots of great fishing, guys. Water levels are perfect. Temperatures here at the lakes anywhere from the low to mid 60s. You know, it continues to come down. We're still above the temperature of the turnover, so we got a couple weeks before that event happens right now. Now, I checked out the guys in the Delaware River. Smallmouth is just screaming right now, guys. There's trophy smallmouth being caught all over. Tim Keebler got on a couple. Heidi Keebler got into a couple nice ones as well. And even our nephew, Lee Phillips, was hammering them out. And they got, what, 2 or 3 dozen smallmouth in one morning on the river. How do you beat that for a day out fishing? A couple of things I want to talk about too. The striper fishing, not a whole lot being talked about. They are catching a few here and there. Guys that are usually fishing them heavy up in Wallen Pond Pack, well, the lake is down. They're in the middle of a drawdown. And what the word on the street is, you can barely even launch a boat without ruining your trailer or the bottom of the boat. So guys, you might want to stay away from Wallen Pond Pack unless you know a guy with a John boat or maybe a kayak to get out in there. But getting into the big boats out on the lake is going to be a challenge. Still have Beltsville here, good fishing here. Pretty much everything is open game. Again, the water temperatures are perfect. Anything you want to throw a hook at is probably going to bite, so great time of year. Guys, get out and get on them. From Pennsylvania, I'm George, your Pocono Outdoors Guy.
New Jersey's stocking efforts on those trout underway this week. As of Monday, the 12th, first deposits will wrap up on October 20th. Before we get another little final dosage later on this fall. 22,000 fish in total on 17 streams, 19 ponds and lakes throughout the Garden State. You can find out more information on what you need to gear up for the trout as far as the stamp and your license, and also all the waterways where these fish are stocked by going to njfishandwildlife.com or pick up the October edition of the Fisherman magazine and check out Tom P's article on trout stocking efforts in 2021. He'll get you geared up too to get in on that bite. A reminder here in New Jersey is that we're still in on that 1 tog limit until November 16th, a 15-inch minimum size. The good news is that you can still catch these blackfish in tight this time of year, even though it's a 1 fish bag limit, and even though you're going to be releasing a lot of fish as well. I found out from Raymond Seo of Triborough Fishing on YouTube, he hit this 4.75 pounder at Belmar last week using Asian crab on the incoming. Raymond said it seems to him like more of those tog have migrated inshore to feed, and he said those jetties are on fire. It's the same thing we found out from talking with Noel at One Stop Bait and Tackle in Atlantic City, who said the same thing last week, and I would imagine you can continue with that action all the way down into Cape May County and hit some of those Cape May jetties. We're still waiting for some more solid reports, perhaps, of some of those speckled trout. A couple of redfish are in the mix, and again, tog and sheep's head from those jetties. And it's the same throughout the state of New Jersey, down into Delaware. Head boats heading out of Lewis and Indian River continue to have at it with a 4 tog limit in Delaware waters and a 16-inch size limit. A few weeks we will talk more about tog action in the Garden State as the middle of November we go back up to an increased bag limit. Word from JB Casper in our North Jersey reports this week, anglers are still hooking up with bluefin out there between the Rockaways and Sandy Hook when the weather and the crowd conditions allow. So you still have that option, and those fish have been pouring all over the live line bunker. We'll see how long that bite continues. Offshore, I heard from Andreas Pantasatos about a 260-pound big eye caught on waterproof right here out of Manasquan Inlet last week with Captain Anthony Bianco. Group of anglers tag team this beast for almost 2 hours. So if you're looking to get offshore for some of the longfin, yellowfin, or some of those jumbo big eye, the midweek forecast from NOAA indicates you have a sweet little window of opportunity. It looks like this Friday. So if you're interested, just keep in mind there are plenty of head boats in the Garden State as well that are making that similar offshore trip. Here locally, you've got the Big Jamaica or the Gambler out of Point, the Old Salty up in Belmar, and I know the Miss Barnegat Light is doing the same out of Barnegat Inlet. You can follow along with our weekly fishing reports posted every Monday morning over at thefisherman.com. Just roll your cursor over fishing reports and you can see all the regional editions, New England, New York, and of course here in New Jersey, Delaware Bay, and that vicinity. Finally, here's the NFL player who broke the internet this week. Bengals long snapper Clark Harris, the pride of Southern Regional High School in Manahawkin, a Rutgers standout during those banner years in the mid-2000s. Two-time winner of the Manhattan Cup, and yeah, he's also my brother. They nearly upended the Packers on Sunday, but this was the vision that broke the internet. It was all over Sports Talk on Monday morning. You know, I have the number 46 jersey at home. I have the hat. If I can hit party fair for one of those little goatee and the mullet, look like James Hetfield a little bit, I've got my Halloween costume for next week. I'll leave you with Tim Smith and an update from the Fisherman Magazine's Dream Boat Fishing Challenge. Catch him up. Stay safe. We'll see you here again next week right here at The Fisherman and thefisherman.com.
Look who's back on top, the 2019 Dreamboat winner, Garrett Weir, by entering a 9.9-pound tog and a 4.5-pound sea bass, which brought him straight to first place with 31 total points. We also saw Andreas Brundle weigh in a 4.9-pound sea bass, which puts him in a third place in that category. Get out there and fish hard. The Dreamboat Fishing Challenge is the Fisherman subscriber-only multi-species fishing competition with a chance to win a new SteigerCraft center console powered by Yamaha, along with many other great prizes. Subscribe now to the Fisherman magazine to be part of the action. SteigerCraft boats, built by people who fish our waters. Serious anglers choose SteigerCraft for their 40 years of boat building experience right here in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Visit SteigerCraft.com for a dealer near you.